The morning sun was just beginning to climb over the skyline of downtown Chicago as Marcus Williams stepped out of his car. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, he carried himself with quiet confidence. Today was important. It was the first week of his new position, and though the title of Chief Executive Officer came with power, Marcus knew it also came with eyes constantly watching him. The glass doors of the corporate headquarters glistened in the light. Marcus adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, and walked toward them. But as soon as he reached the front desk, the warm confidence in his chest cooled. Behind the counter sat a woman in her mid-40s, with a sharp bob haircut and narrowed eyes. The kind of person who seemed to search for trouble where none existed. Her name tag read Karen. She barely glanced up before her face hardened. "Excuse me," she said curtly, holding up a hand as though to stop him in his tracks. "This entrance is for employees only. Visitors use the side door." Marcus offered a polite smile. "I work here," he replied evenly. Karen's eyes narrowed further. She gave him a long, disbelieving stare, her lips curling as though the words themselves were a lie. "Uh-huh," she muttered. "And I'm supposed to just take your word for it? Let me see some identification." The lobby was quiet, but her voice carried, sharp and dismissive. A few people waiting for the elevator turned their heads, curiosity piqued. Marcus could already feel the heat of their stares. "I'm telling you," he said calmly, reaching into his pocket. Karen cut him off, shaking her head with exaggerated disbelief. "I've worked here for 15 years, she declared, her voice louder now. "I know everyone in this building, and I've never seen you before. So unless you can prove you're not trespassing, I'll have to call security." The sting wasn't in her words alone, but in the way she said them. That tone laced with suspicion, the subtle yet heavy weight of judgment. She didn't see his suit, his professionalism, or his confidence. She saw only one thing: the color of his skin. Marcus felt the familiar knot tighten in his chest, the one he had carried since boyhood. He inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to snap back. Instead, he straightened, his eyes meeting hers with unshakable calm. Around them, the lobby grew quieter. More eyes turned. The story of who belonged and who didn't was already being written in whispers, and Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Marcus stood still, his ID halfway out of his wallet, but something in him paused. This wasn't about policy. It wasn't about procedure. It was about something uglier, the assumption that he didn't belong. Karen leaned forward now, her voice sharper. "You know, people try this kind of thing all the time, claiming they work here just to get in. But it doesn't fly with me." She gave a tight, condescending smile and picked up the phone on her desk. "I'm calling building security." Marcus let out a slow breath. "There's no need for that," he said. "I was just about to show you my ID. I'm here for work." "Oh, I'm sure you are," she muttered sarcastically as she dialed. "And I'm Beyoncé." The elevator chimed behind him. A few more people entered the lobby, all white, all watching. One young man in a fleece vest whispered something to the woman beside him. She giggled, then quickly covered her mouth. Karen, still on the phone, made no effort to hide what she was doing. "Yeah, I've got someone here refusing to identify himself. Says he works here." "Uh-huh." "Yep. Black male, mid-30s, dark suit. Says it's his office. Could you come check this out?" Marcus stood motionless, his ID now tucked back into his jacket. The air felt heavy, like static before a storm. He looked around the lobby. Familiar marble floors, company logos on the walls, the smell of fresh coffee from the cafe around the corner. This was his building. He'd walked these halls years ago as a junior analyst, stayed late through mergers, pitched to boardrooms full of skeptical investors. He had earned this place, every inch of it. And yet, here he was, treated like an intruder. The elevator dinged again. A group of mid-level managers stepped out, glanced over, and kept walking. They knew Karen. They saw Marcus. But no one intervened. A moment later, the security guards arrived. Two of them, both tall, white, wearing stiff navy uniforms with radios at their shoulders. Karen pointed dramatically. "That's him." The lead guard approached Marcus. "Sir, we're going to need to see your identification and ask you to step aside." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You haven't even asked me my name." The guard stiffened. We're just following protocol. No, Marcus said evenly. You're following her bias. A murmur spread across the lobby. Someone was filming now. A phone raised just discreetly enough. Karen noticed and quickly smoothed her blouse, suddenly aware of how public this moment was becoming. I've already told you, Marcus said. I work here. And I don't owe anyone an apology for that. But it was too late. The guard stepped closer, one reaching out toward his arm. Marcus didn't flinch, but inside, the humiliation burned deep. Not because he was embarrassed, because it was so familiar. Marcus stood his ground as the guard's hand hovered inches from his arm. His body tensed, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. He'd been here before. Not in this exact lobby maybe, but in this moment. The moment where a black man is made to prove he belongs. Again, and again, and again. Sir, we're not going to ask again, the younger guard said, his voice clipped. Please step to the side. The lobby was no longer a place of quiet professionalism. It had become a stage. Employees had stopped pretending not to watch. They leaned over the cafe railing, peeked from behind reception counters, lingered near the elevators. Some pretended to scroll on their phones while filming. Others just stared, wide-eyed, as if watching a reality show unfold live. Karen stood proudly behind the front desk, arms folded, like she had personally saved the company from disaster. This is company policy, she said loudly, addressing the audience more than Marcus. We can't just let anyone walk in off the street. Marcus turned his eyes toward her, calm, sharp, unbothered. Anyone, he repeated, his voice steady. Or just people who look like me? Karen flinched at that, but said nothing. An older white man in a beige trench coat leaned toward the woman beside him and whispered, Why is he making a scene? Just show the ID and move on. Marcus heard it. Of course he did. But he didn't respond. He was tired of explaining, tired of shrinking himself to make others comfortable. The guards tried again. Sir, we don't want this to escalate. Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. Escalate? You've already made your judgment. She called me a threat. You believed her. No one asked for my name. No one asked what I do. You're not interested in the truth. You're interested in control. The lobby buzzed with murmurs. Some employees began whispering things like, Is that the new guy? Or, Wait, isn't he one of the VPS? But no one stepped forward. Not yet. The older guard reached for his radio. We might need a supervisor down here, he muttered. Marcus stood tall, still untouched, still unmoved. But inside, something cracked. Not from this single moment, but from the 1,000 before it. The microaggressions, the looks, the assumptions, the subtle violence of being questioned, doubted, dismissed. And as the moment dragged on, the tension thick in the air, everyone could feel it. This wasn't just about ID anymore. This was about identity. Marcus could feel it in his chest, the slow, rising fire, the kind that starts in the gut and moves up, burning through years of restraint. He'd spent his life learning how to stay calm, how to not appear threatening, how to smile when judged, nod when dismissed, swallow every sir that sounded more like boy. But something about this moment, the smirks, the whispers, the cameras, the guard's hand on his arm, made it clear he wasn't going to do it again. The guard's fingers touched the fabric of his sleeve. That was it. Marcus stepped back, not aggressively, but with authority. He raised his voice, not shouting, but loud enough to cut through the lobby's noise like a blade. Don't touch me. The room fell into dead silence. Even Karen froze. Marcus turned slowly to face everyone. The guards, Karen, the watching employees, the cameras held just out of view. Let me make this clear for all of you, he said, his voice sharp now, his tone no longer polished but powerful. I've given this company 10 years of my life. I started as an intern. I worked through weekends. I built strategies that saved jobs, maybe even yours. He pointed at Karen. And today, I walked in through the same doors I've walked through hundreds of times. But because I don't look like you, because I don't sound like your idea of boss material, I became a threat. You didn't ask me who I am. You assumed I wasn't supposed to be here. His voice cracked, just slightly. Not from weakness, but from truth. The older security guard shifted awkwardly. The younger one looked away. Karen's arms dropped to her sides. The lobby felt embarrassed. And still, no one moved. No one said his name. Until... ding! The elevator behind Marcus opened. Out stepped a group of executives in suits. Middle-aged, polished, purposeful. At the center was Paul Donovan, the company's former CEO and now board chairman. He looked around at the frozen crowd. His eyes landed on Marcus, then on the security team, then on Karen. "What the hell's going on here?" he asked. Marcus exhaled. Finally. The silence cracked like glass as Paul Donovan stepped into the lobby. His polished shoes tapped across the marble, echoing through the stunned crowd. Karen was the first to speak. "Oh, Mr. Donovan. Thank God. I was just handling a situation here. This man, he refused to show ID. I didn't recognize him. He was being difficult." Donovan didn't respond right away. He studied the scene, the cameras half hidden in employees' hands, the wide eyes, the awkward body language of the guards. Then, his gaze settled on Marcus, and something shifted. "Marcus?" Donovan's voice was quiet but firm. Marcus gave a single nod. Karen blinked. "Wait, you know him?" Donovan's expression darkened. "That's Marcus Williams," he said slowly and with weight. "The new CEO of this company." The words hit the room like a punch. Karen's mouth fell open. One of the guards took an unconscious step back. A woman near the elevator gasped audibly, her phone slowly lowering in her hand. Donovan walked forward, past the frozen receptionist and the ashamed guards, and extended his hand. "Welcome home, Marcus. I'm sorry you had to walk into this." Marcus shook it, though his face was unreadable. The emotions inside him were too many to name. Vindication, fury, fatigue, and something deeper, something ancestral. Karen looked pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "I didn't know," she stammered. "I just thought—" "You thought wrong," Donovan snapped. His voice, usually measured and diplomatic, now carried authority sharpened by disgust. This company just appointed its first black CEO in its history. And in his first week, he's treated like a trespasser in his own building. He turned to the guards. "And neither of you thought to ask for a name. Just followed her lead. Is that the level of training we provide?" One of the guards looked down, visibly ashamed. Marcus looked at Karen. She wasn't smirking anymore. Her arrogance had drained from her like color from her cheeks. Donovan continued. "From this point forward, anyone who thinks they can make snap judgments based on skin color instead of facts has no place in this company." Karen looked up, almost pleading now. "Please, I was just doing my job." "No," Marcus said, his voice calm but filled with steel. "You were doing what too many people do without thinking. You weren't protecting this building. You were protecting your assumptions. And they were wrong." Nobody in the lobby said a word. In that silence, something shifted. For the first time, people weren't looking at Marcus with suspicion. They were looking at him with something else, respect, maybe, or guilt, or realization. But the damage had been done, and the story was only beginning. The atmosphere in the lobby had changed completely. Karen, who just minutes ago stood tall behind her desk like a self-appointed gatekeeper, now looked small, fragile. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached to straighten the papers in front of her, a nervous reflex to fill the silence. But there was no hiding from what had just happened. Donovan turned to Marcus. "You want to handle this?" he asked, offering the floor without hesitation. Marcus didn't speak right away. He looked around slowly, letting his eyes move across the lobby. People avoided his gaze. Even the security guards looked like they wished they could disappear into the marble floor. "I've worked in this building for years," Marcus began, his voice clear. "I started in a cubicle with no window. I brought ideas to meetings and watched them get credit assigned elsewhere. I sat through jokes that weren't funny, assumptions that weren't fair, and treatment that wasn't equal." He took a step forward. "But today wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's ever had to smile through disrespect. Every person who's had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. Every young intern watching right now and wondering if this place is safe for them. No one dared interrupt him. He turned his gaze toward Karen. You had a choice, he said, to ask a question or to assume an answer. You chose the latter, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. Karen finally spoke, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the problem, Marcus replied, without a hint of anger in his voice. Just truth. You didn't care who I was. You only saw what you wanted to see. He looked at Donovan, who gave a small nod. Then, he turned to one of the nearby managers. Please make sure she's escorted off the premises. Effective immediately, Karen gasped. Wait, you're firing me? No, Marcus said simply. You fired yourself the moment you decided I didn't belong. One of the HR reps stepped forward quietly and motioned toward the side exit. Karen hesitated for a second, then slowly gathered her things. No one spoke to her. No one helped. The security guards didn't need to be told what came next. Donovan addressed them directly. This company has policies, but policies without judgment and humanity are useless. You both will report to HR for immediate retraining and suspension. If there's a next time, it will be your last. The younger guard gave a quiet nod. The older one looked deeply ashamed. As they stepped aside, the tension finally began to ease. Marcus walked toward the elevators, the crowd parting for him. He didn't raise his head in triumph. He wasn't smiling. There was no celebration in his stride. But there was power and dignity. He pressed the button for the top floor, the executive suite. Before the doors closed behind him, he looked back at the people still standing there. You all saw what happened today, he said. Now ask yourselves, what would you have done if no one else had stepped in? The doors shut. The lobby was silent, and everyone inside it knew something had changed. The next morning, the lobby looked the same. Polished marble floors, brushed steel accents, quiet hum of business as usual. But the energy had shifted. People walked a little slower, spoke a little softer, made a little more eye contact. Because the story had already spread. The video hit social media within hours. A grainy clip, shot from a smartphone, showed a black man in a suit being confronted by a receptionist and security guards. The caption read, CEO or trespasser. Watch how racism plays out in real time. By sunrise, it had already been viewed over 1 million times. Some viewers were outraged, others weren't surprised, but no one could ignore it. Not anymore. Upstairs in the boardroom on the 32nd floor, Marcus stood at the head of a long glass table. The executive team sat quietly around him. Older, mostly white, dressed in tailored suits and careful expressions. He looked out at them, not with anger, but with clarity. I'm not here to punish people, he said. I'm here to build something better. But we can't do that by pretending everything is fine. What happened yesterday wasn't an isolated incident. It was the symptom of a much larger problem. He walked slowly around the table. If this company is going to move forward, it won't be because of PR campaigns or diversity slogans in the elevator. It will be because we looked in the mirror and did the hard work. He outlined new initiatives, anonymous reporting tools, company-wide anti-bias training, transparent hiring audits, and a mentorship program for underrepresented employees. But more importantly, he made it personal. I will not lead from a distance, he said. I want to hear the stories from the people in the mailroom, the interns, the assistants, not just the ones in corner offices. Because if they don't feel safe and respected, then none of this means anything. One of the older executives, a man who had barely said a word in past meetings, leaned forward and said quietly, "Thank you. We needed this." I think some of us forgot how much work we still have to do. Marcus nodded. Then let's start remembering. By the end of the week, a company-wide email went out. We will no longer reward silence. We will no longer excuse ignorance. We move forward. Together, Karen's name was never mentioned. There was no smear campaign, no public shaming. Just accountability and the commitment to do better. Employees began sharing their own stories, some quietly, in private, others during open forums. For many, it was the first time they felt seen, and through it all, Marcus remained steady, not chasing applause, not playing the victim, just leading. The kind of leader who walks into his own building and is no longer questioned. The kind of leader who builds doors for others to walk through. The kind of leader who turns humiliation into justice and pain into progress. Because in the end, the story wasn't just about one man. It was about all the others watching, waiting, hoping, and finally believing. Maybe change is possible after all.